Try that fire in there.
Hang on. Yeah, now it's on. Now here's the problem: is I'm not getting the table and the faces. I'm just getting.
That's right. We want to look at the saws, and we'll look at our faces. It's bad enough they got to hear our voices.
Let me step it back a little bit. Now we got the table. How's that? That's table and everything and fire.
What's the temperature here? It's about 18 or something?
Yeah. It's probably close. Let's see what the handy dandy thermometer says.
All right. We are done running saws today, so now it's time to run our mouths a little bit. And that's why we have, it's Steve Robb watching this.
22 degrees.
He brought some shock top. Walt picked this stuff out. The shock top Belgian white. We are not going to be sissies and put fruit in our beer. So today's little topic here that we kind of been wanting to do a little bit of is how to spot aftermarket parts when you're buying a used saw. This is not a referendum on aftermarket parts, whether they're any good or any bad, or we're not taking a shot at the aftermarket industry. There's a lot of good stuff there, a lot of good options for guys, and especially when they're making stuff that you can't even get anymore from the OEMs. What this is there's a lot of guys who have a clandestine way of putting aftermarket parts on used saws and flipping them on eBay and Craigslist and stuff like that. And it's not limited to private individuals. I mean, I know, dealers use this stuff. There's nothing wrong with, again, there's nothing wrong with fixing a saw with aftermarket parts, but you should be upfront about it. The guy who's buying the saw should know what's in there, and it kind of should be priced accordingly. You can't have somebody, you have a dead saw, you throw a $10 piston in and charge somebody, $450 and say, oh, it's just been rebuilt. So we're going to look at a couple of different things here. This is one of Walt's saws. We'll start on the outside, on the stuff that doesn't really matter, and then go to the inside. I see so much of this stuff in the store that, I can kind of spot things pretty quick. And there's a lot of guys that come in. What gave us the idea to do this? There's a lot of guys that come in and they bought a saw used, and they run it for a while, and then there's something wrong with it. And you say, well, it's got an aftermarket piston in it, and that's why it failed, and this and that. None of these guys, the examples that I have in my store, none of these guys knew anything about the fact that the saws are rebuilt with the cheapest of the cheap parts.
And the problem with that is the brand gets the blame. I mean, if it's a Husqvarna 372 and it has an aftermarket top end, it blows up, it comes to a Husqvarna dealer. The guy who has it, if he doesn't understand the history of this, he's going to blame Husqvarna. Yeah,
pretty much. They get mad at the brand. There's a lot of ways to identify some of these parts. First, with the plastic stuff, and it really doesn't matter. I mean, if somebody has an aftermarket air filter cover, it doesn't really, it may be a little more brittle, but there's nothing wrong with that. Here again, we're not saying anything's good or bad, other than the fact that you should know what you're getting if you're buying something used. This happens to be an OEM part. On all the, I don't really know much about the stills, but on all the Husky parts, somewhere on the part, it's going to have Made in Sweden written on it. When underneath these air filter covers, they do Made in Sweden. There's a little emblem, EM Original, for Electrolux Motors Original. They may be changing that to the Husqvarna Crown H on a lot of stuff now. And also, you're going to have the part number. Most of the part number is going to be molded into the part. That's going to be on all your plastic parts in one place or another. This thing I kind of identify because I can tell by, we don't have a lot of great light here, but this paint is coming on a couple different shades of orange here. And it's like, you know what, to me that looks like an aftermarket side cover. It works, I'm not saying anything wrong with it. But then the Husky, this doesn't say Made in Sweden, the Husky emblem's not in there at all. So we're correct, it's an aftermarket part. Again, it's okay. You notice like some of the stuff, like this is a mix. This is one of the ugliest saws in the Walt's collection here, Cyclops, but it runs great. It's got a lot of different shades of orange. Some of the Husky plastic, this is an OEM tank. The lighter color, sometimes some of the aftermarket plastic has a little more of a translucent look to it. You know, the color's not as thick, so to speak. There's another thing too. A lot of people were buying those. There was a bunch of 365 clones that were being sold a couple of years ago.
Still are.
And yeah, and everyone has the same serial number. It all ends in 063. We found at least 4 examples, you know, different guys that had them. A little trick, if you want to know how, we start getting into the inside, and you want to know, you know, because now you can buy aftermarket crankcases. Underneath this plate here, your bar plate, hidden from view, is right here. It says made in Sweden, and it's got the Husky part number in there for the crankcase. So that's kind of hidden away there, but that's the kind of thing. You know, a lot of times people say when you're buying a used saw, you should you know, pull the muffler and see if there's any scoring in there. Well, there's probably some other things you should pull and look for. And most of this stuff that we're talking about, it's external. You know, and it's really not going to affect the saw very much. But then when you start getting into the inside, I've had guys come in with, you know, the cheap $17 top ends, and they didn't last very long, or an OEM top end, and you know, the cheapest of the cheap pistons. So you pull off the top cover here, and you look at the cylinder. It used to be kind of black and white, or black and silver, but this is an aftermarket kit. This is for a 272. This is for a 372. And it used to be kind of easy to figure out that a lot of these aftermarket kits, and this is some other company that makes orange and white saws. Yeah. This is a steel top end aftermarket. And a lot of them now have these dark finishes on them. When the dark finishes first came out, it usually denoted a better quality kit. You can't always say that now because there's different companies putting that finish on them. And then a lot of them, the inexpensive kits, have this really bright white silver type finish on them. So just kind of an easy thing to spot. And of course, the first thing you do when you take off the thing, you know, if it's been rebuilt, you know, it's going to be super clean. A kit that, this is actually an OEM 372 kit. Well, if it's really just a used saw, there should be sawdust in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to look at. When you pull the muffler, quite a few of the aftermarket, right here. Yeah, a lot of the aftermarket pistons have this bright, bright shine to them. And if you look in the muffler, and the piston is, you know, like a mirror, and you can probably look in there and shave in it. It's probably an aftermarket piston in there. And this is an OEM piston. This is from a 359. And that's kind of more of the color of the pistons that you'll get. Although I have seen aftermarket pistons that look like that too. Again, you can't say aftermarket, they're all this way or that way. There's so many different variations.
These are clues.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. These are some of the things that you can look for. There's also some markings that are going to be hard to find on a lot of these kits. 372 OEM cylinders, all made in Germany by Molly, and it'll have that stamped in here and down on the ports. It's going to be hard to see when it's on the saw, but if you kind of get in there with the right kind of light, you should be able to get an idea. That's really all the point that we really needed to make here. There's just too many unscrupulous guys that are putting these things together. So it doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy it. It just means that it should be at a decent price. The guy should be up front with you. Whoever's selling the saw should say, yeah, we threw an inexpensive piston in there, and it's running, and that's what it is. You know, if I do that to somebody, you know, you can kind of go into another part of the discussion here, is when would you actually do some of this stuff. You know, sometimes a saw comes in and it's really kind of whooped and it's not worth the whole top end. And unfortunately with saws, just like buying a car, you know, something like this, you say, gee, it's really clean. And that would kind of make most people think that it led an easy life.
You'd never said that about my saw before.
Well, about this one I can say it. But yeah, no, really, because you know, it's like I said, it's like buying a car. And you know, a lot of the pro guys that just destroy these things, you know, they're going to grade the thing on that scale. they're gonna, you know, because some of these guys, the saw looks 10 years old a week after they bought it. So, I don't know, you probably got something to add to that, but.
Well, yeah. And of course, the editor can modify these things, and you know, what Bob is doing here is he's giving us some clues, not necessarily absolutes. I guess we would say is this: if you see the things that he pointed out, it's aftermarket. But that's not all the things that will give you a clue.
The main thing
If it's got an aluminum bracket here, guess what? That's aftermarket. I don't think I've ever seen an aftermarket cylinder with that color, with the Melee or the Mall color.
Oh, yours has it.
No, it
No,
doesn't.
oh, you mean the aftermarket? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
yeah. They don't quite have that. Most of the
These two colors are common for,
Yeah.
and this color right here is common, but
well,
not that.
Well, I think the difference is most of the OEM cylinder kits have like what you would call a natural finish, where these have an applied finish.
Well, I was just going to go there, and that's the
Yeah,
difference.
Yeah, exactly.
This is how it comes out of whatever they use for, whether it's a die cast or a mold. This is as it came out. It's as cast. Where these have an additional finish, and sometimes those finishes are about hiding imperfections. These guys don't have that problem. They make very good stuff and have for a very long time for a whole lot of different industries, which is why the OEMs are always the more desired saw. If you can get a top end that's actually, it's always more desirable. By the way, the same company makes top ends for steel. I'll say the word.
And these kits are getting better too.
The aftermarket ones.
Yeah, and the other thing too, again, to stress this is that, you know, not all aftermarket cylinder kits can be painted with the same brush. Because there's some of them that are really good, and there's some of them that are just
really junk.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah. But if you can buy a kit for $17 for a whole top end kit, you know, the quality's maybe not going to be there.
Well, and we've kind of come around on this a variety of ways. The one problem with aftermarket that has not gone away is the consistency thing. And Bob and I had actually gone here, 2 years ago, we pretty much had identified that, and it really hasn't changed. And my concern is you have the box companies that buy from multiple suppliers. So when you, as Bob had pointed out before, order a part number, it might come from one of multiple suppliers. So you can't guarantee from order to order whether or not the part's going to be the same as the last order. And that's the one thing that has not changed in the last couple of years I've seen.
Yeah, because the phenomenon we run into is one of us or somebody else that we know would find a source and say, "Oh, get this one! I found a good one! I found a good one!" And then the other guy goes to order it, and it's you get the same box, and it's like, well, this isn't what Joe had.
Well, we ran into that with these aftermarket big bores. Is you can tell from the bottom here. There was different molds from box to box, even from the same source, and that was quite annoying to me. Another story, I'm not going to go there, and this is more about Husqvarna. But it's the same deal, where you expect to get the same part every time you order it, and you get something completely different because they went to a different supplier, a different casting house, whatever they use. And that has not changed. So one of the things I can say without a doubt is if you want consistency from part to part, you really have to stick with OEM. You really do. If you really don't care, if you're a goofball like me, where it's a challenge and fun, all right, fine. Spend your $35 and get one of those and take your gamble. But if you're a guy who makes a living doing this, pulling those things apart and putting them back together costs time and money. An extra $50 for making sure you get the same part every time is money well spent. One more point, and he's not going to make it, but I'm going to make the point, is that no, the price points on the whole Husqvarna line of top ends has changed radically. So that in the aftermarket world, in the past, they were doing their pricing, they were doing their marketing, assuming they're going to have a $200+ top end. You know, you have the Meteors at 150. It was a good deal. And you had some of the Chinese stuff that was like $60 and $70. Oh, wow, it's a shockingly good deal. But when Husqvarna dropped their prices right between those two aftermarket sources, neither one of them became a good deal anymore, because why would you spend more money on a Meteor Or why would you not just spend another $30, $40 versus the Chinese aftermarket and get an OEM? And there is no reason not to. The OEM is by far the better choice with those arm saws.
Yeah, that being said, too, I mean, what's this for? 660?
Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, for
That's
$35,
Yeah.
this may be fine.
Yes.
It may be fine.
For
It may run.
$35.
It actually looks like a decent piece.
It is.
It may run for years.
Right.
You know, but the thing is, if it's $35, charge $35. You know, because
Right.
there's dealers too. I hear again, I'm not just picking on guys that are flipping saws on eBay and Craigslist.
Right.
You know, there's dealers that'll buy this stuff, and then they'll look at, and it could be a $10 part, or it could be a top end, and they'll buy this cheap stuff, but they're going to charge, you know, they're going to hose the guy when he comes in. So
Yeah.
if this is a $35, you know what, you put it on the saw, you know, it should be reflected in the price, because, you know, it's probably like $250 or $300 to get a 660 kit from Steel.
Yes.
Right, so you can't, you know, to me, there's an ethical problem with, you know, rebuilding a saw with this and telling, oh yeah, we just put a new, and then, you know, it's just.
Well, there's 3 points here, and Bob, and I think you've articulated it, I'm going to repeat, and I may edit this out, but point number 1 is based on just honesty and margins. If you're spending $35, all right, now sell us it for, say, 40 or 45 markup. When you do the rebuild, reflect that change in price as compared to a $200 top end. Instead of charging $200 in labor plus $200 in a top end, do the $200 in labor plus, say, $40 on the top end. And tell the person that's what you're doing, and tell them that you're taking a risk. That's fair. But putting this top end on where you paid $35 and charging the customer $235, that's dishonest, especially if you call it a rebuilt saw, making the assumption that it's rebuilt in OEM parts. I think that's one point you're making.
Yeah, and the other part is too, yeah, because people are really making a fortune doing some of that.
Yeah.
The other thing is too, is, you know, here again, some of these parts are fine, they run a long time, and that's kind of the better aftermarket kits have a pretty decent life in the field. But you know, not everybody wants the aftermarket, period. So another idea here is, you know, with some of these applied finishes, you know, versus the natural finish, if you spot that, there's some people that are just gonna, like, you know, I just don't want to buy a saw with aftermarket stuff. And, you know, even if the guy's being upfront with you, he may not deny it and say, yeah, it is. And you just, at least now you can kind of get an idea of if you're really not comfortable with the aftermarket parts, you can say, I don't think I want to buy that.
Yeah. And again, it's about being transparent on what you've done to the saw and pricing accordingly. It's an ethical issue. In terms of service life, yeah, I mean, both of us have seen some that are better than others, but I don't think either one of us have got enough time over enough years to say that even though it's the best aftermarket part that we've seen, is it as good as an OEM? And you know, this, it's about numbers to me. I mean, I've seen these and I've seen these that have had 10, 12 years of hard use on them and they still run. I have never seen any of these with 10, 12 years of hard use and still running because they haven't been out that long.
Yeah, the jury's still out on those.
So, I guess my point on that is, yeah, I'll say this is a good looking part and I'll use it, and this might be a good looking part, like I have on Cyclops. But like Cyclops is case in point, that's a work in progress for me. I've run it for a couple of years. Right now it's out of service because it's being replaced by something else for fun and games. But yeah, while I've had good luck with that, I still can't recommend that as an alternative to OEM for longevity and reliability, because I don't have enough time and there's not enough samples in my life of people who've had enough time on enough top ends to say that, yeah, statistically those things are as reliable and long lasting as OEM. They simply haven't been around long enough to say that. We play with them, have fun, like this one here, runs great right now, but what about 5 years from now? I can't tell you, and I cannot predict.
You know, the aftermarket advocate, though, might respond by saying, you know, if these kits are 10 or 20% the cost of the OEM kit, and it only lasts half as long, it's still not a bad deal.
Well, I don't buy that, because
as long as I mean, it depends if you're doing your own work.
There you go.
Because that way you're not always factoring shop labor in, okay?
Right.
Because a lot of times that raises the boats, you know, together, and you're still going to pay a fair amount to have the thing done. So, you know, that's you know, somebody can respond with that. It's kind of hard to, you can't, like I said, you can't paint them all with the same brush.
Right, and having said that, and taking his point, not only have we not seen that period of time on them, but we have not seen them fail either. So the jury's out. We really can't tell you, I can't tell you with any authority that they're either worse or better lasting than the OEM. I can't tell you because I haven't had them long enough.
There's another variable in this equation.
That's the person who put it together.
Well, that wasn't, no, it is. That wasn't even the one who was, yeah, right, does the guy know what he's doing?
Oh my God.
You know, the other, yeah, because, you know, guys jamming all kinds of strange hardware. But the other thing I was going to say is, a lot of it is the intended or expected duty cycle of the saw that's being rebuilt. Okay, and here's where you got to be careful putting too much into what you read on the internet and what you watch on YouTube, because you know, for instance, like in my shop, I got guys waiting for 372s, and these are all pro guys, and they're going to run them all day, and they're going to put them things through some pretty serious, you know, hours, and that is really like a true test of how long something's going to hold up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that'll say, yeah, I bought the, you know, the $17 top end, you know, and it's great, I had great luck with it. Well, you know, how much did you use it? And, you know, a lot of us saw geeks, you have, you know, people that are really into this and they have a bunch of saws for personal use. There's a lot of people that are giving a lot of testimony about how long, you know, some of the cheapest stuff lasts, but, you know, they run a few tanks through it, cut a few cords of wood.
That's it.
That's a totally different duty cycle than a full-time pro. I mean, anybody that buys a 372 from me in the store, yeah, they have an expectation as to what it is, what it's going to do, and how long it's going to last. I mean, you know, sometimes guys have shown up with these. Hey, I bought this online. Will you put it on for me? Okay. He knows what it is. He knows what it costs, and his expectations are, you know, not what they would be. You know, with you know, the $150 kit. Everything, you know. Here again, if all the numbers are on the table, right, there's nothing wrong with any of this stuff. Here again, it's not really a critique of the, you know, the parts as much as it's, you know, people buying used saws. You should know what you're getting, and you should pay for what you're actually getting too.
Which is point number one. I have to say, it's funny you say that about service life. I have one guy in particular, I'm not going to mention any names, and I've made a point of not making any videos because there might be, well, not something he wants to see online. But I can guarantee you the aftermarket top end is more than adequate for this guy, because that's not what's failing.
Yeah.
They come in looking like bananas, and what's failing is when these things meet skidder tire. So in a situation like that where...
I know a couple of them.
Yeah, I mean, the aftermarket is actually probably a good idea, because you'd know it's going to get wrecked.
Yeah,
so cut the cost.
And the saw's half wrecked when they bring it in.
That's it. So,
you know, so it's not necessarily worth the investment. And here again, there are examples. I don't mean that, you know, everybody that raves about these kits. There are examples of these kits running a long time, in a kind of commercial. I mean, there are examples where they will run as well and as long as an OEM kit. But here again, it's the, you know, it's the consistency thing.
Service life.
Yeah.
What oil is he
so
using?
It's really just know what you're getting and pay for what you're getting.
And that's the point of this one.
Yeah, we really don't mean to.
Yeah.
Because we all play with this stuff. You know, for a lot of guys, you know what, you gotta. Not everybody can afford a $300 top end. You know, some guys, it's like, you know what, can you get my saw running? Well, here's an option. This is what we can do, and this is what it's going to cost. And you know, there's no, it's not warranted or anything like the OEM stuff. For some people, that's you know, that's probably not a bad thing to do.
Well, and I think both of us have got stuff out in the field now, and again, we won't know for a couple of years. I've got both some of those goofy top ends and these out right now, and they're actually in pro service. So right now, you know, no news is good news.
Yeah,
but they can hand grenade next year. Don't know, but we'll see.
But if they get a couple 3 years out of it, you know,
they're happy. They're gonna throw it away anyway.
Yeah, because like we said, there's a lot of guys that'll break the saw by dropping it or physically anyway.
Other things are failing versus the top ends.
So the summary is here again. It's like there's nothing wrong with this stuff as long as you know what you're getting.
Number one.
Because you wouldn't like, you know, if this kit really could be bought for $35, online
Yeah.
or in a dealer that or any shop that might say, hey, we got aftermarket kits cheap, and you pay 35 or 50 bucks for it with a reasonable markup, and you know what it is, that's okay. But there's nobody that would want to pay $250 for something that is really 35.
And that's a major point.
So that's kind of where this is going. We're not taking a shot at the aftermarket industry.
Yeah, this is about the honesty of the people who use the parts.
Unscrupulous saw flippers.
And how to take some looks to see, on these parts here, just as in a quick aside, there are no markings. There's your first clue.
Yeah, right.
Nothing. But, alright, so that's subject number 1.
We covered it.
Covered, done. That's a video. It's a wrap. Where did this top end come from? I don't recognize that one at all.
That's a Mako top end, and it does have the little measles. It does have the chicken pox up in the squish band.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It looks completely different than the ones from...
Well, they got it, from their supplier.
I
which
see.
We never really could identify from.
So that's how they're coming in now.
Yeah.
It's alright. It's not great. It works.
This kit had unreal compression. I had it on a saw. I ran it for a little bit.
Is that the one that had the flakes? Or that
No,
one survived?
no, that was Joel's.
Oh, okay.
This one actually, I ran it a little bit, maybe 2 tanks at the most. It's in good shape.
Looks like it's got big transfers.
Yeah, it does. And then this, I didn't really mess around with this. I guess this could end up on a saw, some kind of ugly thing that.
Yeah, kind of like that one over there.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way,
what's on there, right?
yeah, this is an argument between Bob and I. We have to have at least one argument every get-together.
All right.
This is an aftermarket part right here. Sujihara bar. That's an aftermarket part. That's a damn good one.
Well, it depends on how you define aftermarket.
There we go. This is an aftermarket part too if I put it on a steel.
That's like buying Coopers for your truck and say that's an aftermarket tire.
That's it.
No, it's a tire. No, this. Aftermarket generally denotes a low-cost alternative.
Oh, okay. So we're going to put two qualifications. One that's no longer OEM and the other is cheap. That makes it aftermarket.
No. It's just like that. I don't accept that that's an aftermarket bar.
Well, then you show me one saw.
Because Husky bars are made by Oregon.